Welcome to Tuesday Truths, where where we take the biggest moments from this week and turn into something you can actually carry into your day. This week I'm bringing together the best of my conversation with Mitchell, a Silicon Valley veteran redefining what credibility looks like in a world craving real human connection. The truth is, leadership gets lighter when you get clearer. When you lead with integrity, choose vulnerability over image, and build trust through consistency, respect, and authenticity, you don't just grow influence, you grow impact. We also touch on Mitchell's idea of executive abundance, creating more meaning, more freedom, and more results by getting crystal clear on who you are and why it matters. If you've been feeling pulled in 10 different directions, I think this episode will definitely bring you back to the center. Let's get into today's truth. That's a bit of a tongue twister, but if you missed part 1, please go back and part 2 will drop tomorrow. Anyway, here's Mitchell and myself for Tuesday Truths. Before we dive in, I want to give a big, massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with leading our own way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on leading our own way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect.
So
beautiful.
I've been in Silicon Valley for 39 years, happily married for 37, have a 27-year-old son who's amazing. I've started 20-ish companies, sat on the board of a public firm, have created and run CEO networking groups, did that for a decade, have the fun part, sat on the board of a public firm for 9 years. One of my companies is a book publishing company. We have published over 750 books.
Wow.
I've written 65. So the book you see behind me is my 66th. And what really sort of transformed who I am and how I'm showing up today, because this is not the me of, youth, is that between 2019 and 2020, I interviewed 500 thought leaders on what is credibility. Wow. And I've come up with an updated definition of that. And so from there, I recognize the value. What I do as a human is I actually look at chaos and I create simple models, right? So I could see chaos and put a framework around it. And then I've made my career, my life of just either selling or interacting or deploying a number of different frameworks. And what was fascinating to me is the framework of credibility was good, but not big enough, because lots of people think they're already credible. The framework of clarity, which is essentially one of the superpowers I unraveled when I did the interviews, that one also not good enough. And I needed a bigger framework that people could wrap their arms around. And that framework I'm calling executive abundance. And in order to understand what that framework meant in the bigger context of things, I'm in the tail end of a PhD program. And the research that I had done was so I can actually take a look at what's going on in the field when somebody says, "Hey, Mitchell, doesn't this look a lot like that?" I could say, "Yup, it does. And here's where it adds and borrows, and here's where it adds new things." And I am doing part of the dissertation or part of the PhD. I'm doing the dissertation. So dissertations, I didn't know this before I started, is always 5 chapters long. So I've done the 5 chapters of the dissertation, and I'm doing what's called a capstone versus a pure research dissertation. With a capstone dissertation, you also have, they call it artifacts. You have other things. So the artifacts that it is basically showing that the framework of executive abundance, where the dissertation does it academically, that framework can be deployed in the marketplace. In academic sense, it's called instantiations. Okay, so what's interesting is I have a book 2 chatbots and 2 executive business programs, and that will be the entire capstone as a dissertation and those other artifacts. And conceptually they play off each other. Theoretically, they don't. The dissertation and research comes first. The artifacts come second. But as I'm deploying the book, as I'm deploying the courses and the chatbots, it helps reinforce what I'm learning in the academic side. And so it just conceptually helps me sort of reinforce the things I'm writing about. So it's one of those things, you could say this, as a father, as a dad, everyone told you life would change before you had your son. And then all of a sudden you become a father and you're like, yeah, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Same is true. Yeah. Same is true for me when I became a parent. I'm going to say the same is true if you really do the PhD process right. The person you are afterwards is just, I didn't understand how transformative it would be. And the person I am now and moving into is so much different than that human before I started this process. Because having clarity, having these 3 to 9 words, I'm going to call it the CPoP, it's your customer point of possibilities, right, is really transformational. So the CPoP is comprised of it's a formula. I've deployed this formula 1,400 times. For somebody who is vulnerable, who is credible, who's authentic, like you are, it's impossible not to easily apply the formula. So let's do that together.
Okay.
So in the world, now normally what happens, it is, if you're a business owner, it's who you serve, right? Who are you adding value to? So in this case, if we're talking about the podcast or we're talking about what's next, who is it that you serve? Who is that audience that, and as focused as you can, who is it that you want to reach out to and add value to?
So I want people to, 80% of my guests have been through something that has been quite pivotal, mental health wise, whether it's a change in trajectory of their career, they're sitting in the messy middle. I really want people to see where people have choices in their life, right? Based off my own journey of moving to the side of the world, winning the National Teacher of the Year award, found myself in a bullying scenario where my depth of my mental health went to somewhere it had never been before. And I only wish, I was always quite an open person, so I always was quite open, but I found the opposite to what most people do. I saw people didn't want to hear it anymore because they didn't see it physically happening, so they didn't necessarily know if it was real or true, if it was just me not getting along with somebody. But obviously the depth that I was taken to I was a confident person moving to Australia. I won the National Teacher of the Year award, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't arrogant. I just wanted to get along with people. Human connection and talking has always been something of my personality. And then just going through, and again, I'm not here to go through all those dark points, but looking for fixes that didn't work, pleasure eating, having a child, building a house, having a new car, another dream job that didn't work out in terms of toxic leadership, and then also almost passing away. So I really want people to understand that they have choices in their life, but to see how people have changed their lives. Hence why all these guests and these beautiful people that I've met along the journey, they've changed their life. Whether they haven't, and this is why we touched on your childhood. 80% of my guests have navigated them through some form of journey. Many topics I could go into right now, but I think you can see where I'm going by just looking at the list of guests that I've had. But there's a percentage that have had a beautiful childhood, but we still touch on it because it makes people understand why certain decisions were made down the track, whether it was personal, whether it was relationships, whether it was career paths. So the outcome is still the same. The viewers can take pieces of gems for each of the guests wherever they may feel fit. So it's a big niche. I say it's mental health, it's self-help, it's educational, but it's so vast. If we're talking about cancer one week, the next week we could be talking leadership or abusive relationships or toxicity or you know, or sports athletes who have navigated their journey, and we show how they've made it into their professional life. I've had an NBA dad on, for example, and he navigates how he's been an NBA dad and the difficulties of that, but while still be an inspirational person to their son, and so on. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's quite a wide one, to be fair, but I didn't know how to navigate it into 9 words.
You answered the bigger question, but not the direct question I asked you, because the question I asked was the who. So is it, the way you're describing it is all humans?
I am, yeah. The people, yeah.
All right. So you normally, I would want to narrow that down. Mm-hmm. But given that we're live, let's just keep that. Let's keep that as is. And I'll say to you, the who should be more narrowed down when you can. Okay. And as you were speaking, I was formulating what your CPoP could be. Okay. Because what I'm trying to listen for is 2 things: the who and the what. So that's the formula of the CPoP. The who is who you're serving. So for me, if you listen to the executive coaching, it's fast-growing CEOs.
Yeah.
Which is still a pretty big audience, but it's much more narrowed down. On the LinkedIn stuff, it's business owners, still a pretty big owner, right? Yeah. So the who being people is huge, but with a podcast, it's probably acceptable. And I'm going to encourage you to narrow that down over time when you can. Yeah. And then the second part of the CPoP is the what, and the what is either their pain point or their pleasure point. One of the things that happened in 2023 changed the world.
What was that?
And what happened in 2023 is thought leadership and content creation is now ubiquitous. Anyone who wants to be a thought leader in the space, all they have to do is be able to ask AI the right questions.
Yeah.
So it is no longer the rules that worked prior to AI no longer work today. And that's what other people are trying to sell you. They're trying to say stuff that worked in the past. Those rules don't work anymore. So you don't need to be a massive content creator, right? You have to do the stuff that you like doing a podcast because you want to learn, you want to meet other people, and you're going to grab lessons and share stuff with others, and you're providing a platform for someone like me to be able to chat. That's a win-win-win. And
I think so.
Whether or not one person sees it, you and I, or we add your mom and your wife, and I'm just kidding. Whether or not it's 1 or 100,000 or 1 million, what matters is if you're having fun while you're doing it, then it's worth doing, and that makes it special. Versus you being an expert in a particular area because you've asked AI to solve a problem for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like a little secret diary. I'm just getting it out there to the world, and I completely agree. So going back to you then, if you could, is there an example of, can you actually share an actual, you don't need obviously mention the business name or whoever came to you, but is there an example that you can share with us of how you helped somebody where they came to you, didn't have, or they didn't know what they didn't have? Because before you said 98%, no, that's a separate question, but before you said 98% of the people that you interviewed, and obviously your friend slapped you in your face with that new perspective, surely there was a percentage out of that, though, that actually needed you.
Oh, it's a good question. Actually, it's like 3 questions in one. I'm trying to figure out which question to answer, and then I'll tell you what question you asked me that I'll answer.
Okay, sorry.
So no, that's all right. Sure. Let's ask. I'm going to answer the practical question.
Okay.
How does somebody actually use something like this effectively? Right, which is really a component of let's talk about how to use LinkedIn effectively. We'll start there, right?
Sure.
Because that's very tactical, very hands-on. And when I'm working with a fast-growing company, what happens is take what will sound like a single business and think about it as it is a bigger business, but it's also the entities inside the business, because you need to cascade down this level of clarity and credibility. We'll show the credibility stuff afterwards, if you don't mind. So
yeah.
The interesting part is to use LinkedIn effectively. Let's talk about 3 things. First, you need to have a LinkedIn profile that's compelling. So it needs to be credible, right? Second, you need to nurture those people who are current connections. So somebody like you who doesn't have a lot of connections, you're not using LinkedIn today, right? So if you wanted to use, and by the way, you don't have to use it if it doesn't make sense, but if you want to use LinkedIn, who is it that you should be talking to and who should you be reaching out? And that's the third piece, is who are second level or third level connections today that really should be part of your network. So those are really 3 things, right? First, when people come to your profile, they're not scared away because you have a credible profile. Second, you nurture the first level connections. And third, you do an outreach to your people you're not connected to. And I do things in that process. And so the first thing that I do with anyone I interact with, because there are so many, and if you're just listening to this, there's so many experts, I've got my double fingers on, who are going to tell you all the things you have to do to be effective on LinkedIn. You should do videos, and the videos will go viral. And, for most of us today, you don't need to go viral. There's no value. One of my mentors is Marshall Goldsmith. He has 1.5 or 1.6 million followers on LinkedIn, and he will tell you he's never picked up a client from a post.
Yeah.
But he has a different reason for posting now. His reason for posting is if 1.6 million people are following him and 200,000 people read one of his posts, and each of them have been positively affected for 5 minutes of time by reading a short post and interacting. Think about how many lives he's changed, how many minutes of life he's changed, right? So he has a different reason for posting now, right? So for you, once again, for anyone I'm talking with, is the most important thing is let's narrow in on your clarity. And if I know your clarity, then it's easier to figure out, A, are you connected to people who are in your clarity, in your playground? I like to call it playground. Are you already connected to people in your playground? And then the second thing is, who else should be in your playground? Right? And that's what the clarity, so we start with a clarity statement, then we focus, because I can't look at a LinkedIn profile until I know what the person wants to do and who they are, what playground they're playing in. Then I look at their LinkedIn profile and I update that.
What you just witnessed is only a snippet of our amazing conversation this week. This is what Leading Our Own Way is all about. Real stories, real transformation. If you're watching this before Wednesday, part 1 dropped yesterday and part 2 releases tomorrow. But if you're already here after Wednesday, all parts are available now. Head to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and every other major platform and look for the numbers on the bottom left-hand corner of the episode's covers to start with part 1. Trust me, you don't want to miss this incredible journey.